Welcome back to the Moto Marketing Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Luke Nesler. Hey, I appreciate everybody tuning in and listening and submitting questions to all of the previous episodes. If you do have questions that you want to get answered on this show, please send them to questions@motomarketingpodcast.com. Also, a listener had reached out to me on Instagram with a great suggestion, something that I'm going to start doing. We record these in advance. So today's guest was recorded a few weeks ago. So what I'm going to start doing on my Instagram account is letting you know who the guests of the current week are going to be. Who am I interviewing this week? And I'm going to give you the opportunity to submit questions to my Instagram DM that you would like for me to ask that guest. So for example, we have Little D, Donnie Imler coming up. I'm putting that out on Instagram. You can drop a question in my DM that you would like for me to ask Donnie Imler, or whoever the guest might be. So be sure to follow me at Luke Nesler, Lukenesler on Instagram. I'm not on Twitter very much, but man, I tell you what, during Supercross season, it's hard to not be on there and just follow what Steve and the guys at Pulp and Wygant and Davey, all the guys at Racer X are posting. So I am on Twitter as well. If you want to look me up, it's at Luke Nesler CEO. Feel free to jump on there and engage with me and argue with me on Twitter as well. Hey, today's guest is somebody that I think you're going to enjoy to hear from. We've got Bob Weber, the founder and president of 6D Helmets. Super appreciative of Bob. He's, for those of you that may follow me on social, know that I've started an e-bike team to compete this season in the GNCC specialized EMTB series, and Bob is a major component of that. He's supporting the team, providing us helmets, and really appreciative of that. I was excited to have Bob on the show to talk about the product, to talk about the technology. How does he promote and market that technology? It's no secret the technology that goes into helmets sometimes is confusing. It's different than others. How do they differentiate their brand and their product from all the others on the market? Because without doing that, they're just another product. Bob does a great job of it. He talks about that in this episode of the Moto Marketing Podcast. I hope you enjoy, and we will dive into the interview.
Welcome to the Moto Marketing Podcast, presented by Racer X, the podcast for moto industry professionals, entrepreneurs, and riders. If you want to grow your brand and business in today's digital-first world, you have to know how to turn a stranger into a fan, turn a like into a customer. You have to know how to turn attention into dollars. This podcast is dedicated to keeping you in the know on real marketing tactics that work in the moto world so that you grow your business and help grow the sport. Get ready to learn from the very same marketing experts trusted by Racer X, Lucas Oil Pro Motocross, GNCC, and NBC Sports. They'll help you navigate the world of digital marketing for your moto brand. This is the Moto Marketing Podcast. Presented by Racer X.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Moto Marketing Podcast. As promised, today's guest is the founder and the man behind the 6D helmet itself. We got Mr. Bob Weber from 6D on the line with us today. Bob, thanks for being part of the podcast, man. I'm excited to chat with you.
No, thank you, Luke. I really appreciate it. It's a good opportunity to chat and just get caught up a little bit more on our brand and what we're doing out there. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm excited to dive in with you today. You and I have had several conversations over the last few months, and just really educating me on the technology of the helmet. We've had some marketing discussions. You and I both are cyclists, and we've had discussions about that. And you're actually going to do some stuff with our e-mountain bike team next year. So I've had the opportunity to learn a lot about not just the brand, but the technology behind the brand. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on today is because, you know, the point of this podcast is to help the moto industry grow as a whole. And you guys, being, you know, safety products, you guys have a unique thing that you have to conquer. It's not just a matter of getting the message out there about the product and the brand, but it's really educating people on the technology that goes into 6D. So that's something that I'm excited to dive into, that other people that have specialty products, whether it's a safety product or something else, how do you guys educate the marketplace on what it is that goes into keeping their heads safe and intact, that your helmet provides that maybe the others don't. So that's kind of where we'll go into today. But I always like to start back at the beginning, and I've briefly heard you tell this story somewhere else, but I was intrigued by it. So if you don't mind, let's kind of quickly recap where did 6D come from, and how did it go from just a concept and an idea to a full-blown company? I've always been curious about that because of all the technology that is behind something like a helmet. So where did we get started?
Yeah, no, that was, we got started in 2011, just working on a concept that I had in my mind on improving helmet performance for the athlete in the event of an accident. And, I had some awareness of a young man that had a rotational brain injury that was pretty serious from a motocross accident. And, just kind of noodling in my mind about how that happened and why that happened. And, is there a way that we could improve helmet design to better protect against rotational impacts? I kind of landed on a method, if you will, of separating or uncoupling a inner liner or almost an inner helmet from the outer liner and shell of the helmet. And in doing so, we would give the helmet the ability to have that inner liner displaced in 3 dimensions in an accident. So it would provide a softer, more compliant helmet over a broader range of energy demands, which is a whole nother topic. But it would also be able to displace in a shearing oblique type impact, so that the jerk, which is a technical engineering term defined by a change in acceleration, but the actual jerk of the impact would be dampened to some degree compared to a traditional monolithic helmet liner that was, and still is in most cases in place in helmets out there today. So, the whole concept was, okay, uncouple the shell from the inner liner. Let's put a suspension system in there that will make the helmet more compliant over a broader range, and let's see if we can do that. So I called an engineering, a friend of mine that's an engineer, and I've known for many years, a guy named Robert Reisinger, who ultimately became my partner on the project in the very beginning. And Robert's got a deep history in the motorcycle industry and also the cycling industry. And I said, listen, Robert, I've got this helmet concept in my mind that I think would provide a safer, better mousetrap, if you will, for the athlete racing motocross, off-road dirt bikes, And his first comments to me is, what are you, crazy guy? You're going to go out and compete against all these established brands.
What were some of the ideas that you guys had early on that maybe stuck or you guys decided weren't going to work, as far as how are we going to, number one, get the name of this new brand out there, and number two, what on earth are we going to do to help people understand that this is a premium product, something that is designed to bring a higher level of safety to you, not just another helmet on the shelf? And where did you guys kind of steer the ship that way?
Yeah, so good question. So, Robert was concerned about, why would we want to enter into this space? And I just said, listen, let me send you some stuff to give a read. I'd like you to get your arms around the problem, and then I'd like you to explore the solution I'm proposing that we work on, and maybe we can come up with something that could satisfy the need. And so, Robert spent a couple of weeks reading some material I sent him, and looking at some sketches I had put together, and And he got back to me and said, you know what, honestly, I think you're onto something here. And he says, I think we can improve and make a significant improvement on where things are at today. So that kind of gave me reinforced my interest. I go, okay, I think we can do this. I need an engineer to help me solve some of the engineering problems that are certainly going to come up as we try to build this helmet. But let's put a plan together to build this company or start this company and bring this tech to the market. So the first thing we did is we built a number of prototypes. We marched down to Dynamic Research, which is a laboratory here in LA that does helmet testing, and had the ability to do the rotational testing that we needed to prove out that we could improve over an existing helmet. And that was a pretty fun and exciting time, because I was, technically disassembling old helmets and carving up liners and installing our system in it and putting the helmets back together, and then, marching 6 helmets into the laboratory that I spent probably, 20 or 30 hours on each one of those helmets, and we're going to go smack them and see what they do.
Right.
And, so that process was exciting, but we had very, very good results in the test laboratory. And Terry Smith, in fact, said, "Man, what are you doing fooling around with motorcycles here? You should be taking this to the military and to football." And I said, "Well, yeah, I'm flattered. That's great, but I think I can get it built in the motorcycle industry, and that's where we need to start." So we continued down that path. Those successful tests allowed us to put the rest of the business plan together and raise the necessary capital to start the company. And I had given myself 1 year to do that whole process and to find the capital. And fortunately, in the 11th month, I was able to secure enough financing or investment, I should say, in the company for us to get started. And that's how we went about getting the company established.
That's pretty impressive that all that came together within 12 months and successfully. I mean, you've got to have the right chips fall in place, and then a lot of smart people making the right decisions. Man, that's impressive.
I'll tell you, at the time, it was me and Robert, and
wow.
I told my wife, I said, "You need to give me 12 months, and if I don't get this sorted out, I'll go get a job." But I believe I can make this happen. And it was really, I dedicated 100% of my time and effort to it. And Robert had an existing business going that he needed to tend to. So the bulk of the early work on the patent research and the patent applications and the building helmets in my garage and all of that was on me, and the engineering was on Robert. And then we, by the second year, we were making multiple trips over to the factory. Actually the first year too, we were, over to the factory in probably the third quarter of the first year. And I did all of that out of my checkbook, and it was just, it's kind of tough, but we got through it, and we got the product developed and built. And the second part of that question was, the education. And quite truthfully, that's probably been the biggest hurdle, because as I look back over the last 7 years that we've been selling product and in the market, in the beginning, I think we were almost too technical. We talked in too many technical terms about rotational acceleration and, linear acceleration and, gambit metrics and HIC and, all these different injury metrics and why the helmet did this or did that and how it compared to other helmets. And I think a lot of that went over people's heads, and they just said, okay, well, I can see a suspension system there, and my motorcycle has suspension, so I understand that. And that helmet's pretty hard when I hit the ground, and this helmet might have a different sensation, if you will, in that same type of an event. And so I think that in general, the consumers kind of understood where we were going, but we kind of learned over the last, over this period to just maybe back it down a little bit and, define it as suspension for your head. Try to not get too wrapped up in too many of the technical injury metrics and, have that information available on our website for people that want to study it. But, from the general marketing effort, we've just kind of tried to simplify that over the years.
Have you seen a difference in that once you've kind of bringing it down to the normal man's level as far as putting it in terms that they can relate to? Did you see a change in just reaction to that?
Yeah, I think so. I recall, in the early days when we were talking to dealers, and nobody knew about us before November 30th, I think it was, of 2012. We had our launch, which we did at the Geico Honda race team facility, and we had already, made an agreement with Factory Connection that they would wear our helmets and we would provide them a better product for their athletes to hopefully improve, their chances of keeping their riders active throughout the whole season, because they had some pretty significant issues with concussion on various riders over the life of the team, and Darren Borchardino over there was already looking for a better solution. So we had showed Ricky and Jeff, the owners of the team, our technology, and they were interested, and they connected us to the Tomax, and if Eli was to like it, then we were able to put it in front of the rest of the team. And every bit of that process was super successful because we had physical data that showed how much better and how much superior the technology in the helmet was to the traditional helmet designs that were in the marketplace at the time. So it was a pretty easy deal to put together with the Geico guys. Yeah. So when we first, on that day on November 30th, when we made the announcement, there was a lot of interest, and we got worldwide media exposure just from that one press event. So now the education process started, and I think back, I mentioned the dealers a minute ago. I remember our sales guys talking to dealers and these long, drawn-out sales, pitch defining the technology. And I remember telling Scott, I go, Scott, you got to simplify it, man. You just, I can just see the guy's eyes glazing over, and I'm not even there with him, And it's, the dealer's calling up going, hey, I want to order some 6Ds, and we're overselling it. We're so proud of what we had, I think, at the time. So, over time, we've massage that message a little bit, tried to scale it back a little bit, simplify it, and I think it has been effective. The company's continued to grow over the entire tenure of our brand, and we've got helmets being sold and marketed in every off-road marketplace around the globe, if you will. Pretty much, we've got helmets going there. So, that's been a success, and we continue to develop and invest back into the brand and the technology with the profits that have come from helmet sales over the time. I
think that's a common thing that a lot of folks that have a product or a service, they tend to go too far into what we call in the marketing world technobabble. And that's, that was your concern with over-explaining the technology. Well, a company like us, what we do with targeted digital marketing, there's a lot of terminology that our strategists and our marketing experts use when they're talking to one another. But if I were to explain my product and my process to you with, that same terminology like retargeting and pixel tracking and just all the marketing terms that go into it, your eyes would glaze over and you get lost. And I think that's something that a lot of, I don't care if it's a hard product or a service, brands, especially in the moto space, tend to go too far that way. They get excited, and the biggest thing is being aware of, hey man, when you're talking to somebody, their eyes glazing over, and it's exactly the comment you made. Like you probably could see the individuals, just the disconnect and being lost from whoever was explaining it to them, and then really kind of toning it back down until you finally found that way to explain it to where it's kind of like a suspension on your bike. And we use that term or that phrase a lot when explaining our product. Hey, it's kind of like this. Retargeting is kind of like if a car salesman calls you back and invites you to come back for a test drive. It's kind of like this. It's kind of like that. So I think that's unique that you caught that early on and made that adjustment.
Yeah, I was guilty of it too, and so I think we just, we kind of said, hey, we need to pull it back a little bit, talk a little bit, speak a little bit more in layman's terms, and just try to simplify it for everybody. But I think the really cool thing too is it's the evolution of helmets that we brought to the marketplace has also affected the entire marketplace with other brands working on improved solutions for their products, and many brands license the MIPS technology, which has, been offered out to many brands, and it's definitely an improvement on the rotational acceleration side. That it's a one-dimensional solution compared to our system that's the three-dimensional solution. So, and then other brands have worked on developing their own systems. So, the good thing for the market is, in general, helmets have improved quite a bit in the last 6 to 7, 8, 9 years here. Since we started what we're doing on with 6D. So, I think now today, for the customer, it's like they need to spend a little bit of time getting their arms around the different methods that are out there from each manufacturer, the different technologies that are available to them in their helmets. We get asked all the time, oh, so this is MIPS, and we're like, well, no, this isn't MIPS. This addresses some of the same energy components that a MIPS liner does, but it does it in a much different way, in a much more comprehensive way. And so now our job today is defining those differences between the different technologies that are out there.
Yeah, having that key. What's the key differentiator in anybody's product is big, especially in your all's world with, several helmet manufacturers coming out with their own version of a better mousetrap and really educating on what it is that sets you guys apart. Hey, one thing I'm curious about, something that I've noticed about your brand is who you associate yourself with. What riders do you position 6D with? And it's interesting, when I go to the 6D website, the first couple people that I see are 7 Deuce Deuce, Adamant Nap, and A-Ray. Two people that are definitely not known for stellar results. I mean, they're hella good riders. I mean, they're making mains. They're doing their thing. But are they the Eli Tomacs of the world? No. But there's something to be said about the following that these guys have for, yes, they're on the track, they do pretty well, but mainly off the track. What are they doing on social? How are they representing their brand? And then as you scroll down, I run into the entire Deegan family, Hayden, Hudson, and Brian, and arguably they are the most marketable names in the sport right now, just with their YouTube channel. And then you have several other talented riders on your site, as well as other folks that you're sponsoring that might not be listed here. But talk to me about, have you noticed the importance of brands like Hayden Deegan and brands like Intignap and A-Ray that have that online following? Do you put a priority or give notice to that in addition to the results, or what is it that you look for when you're looking to position the 6D brand with an athlete?
Yeah, that's a really good question and a good observation too. And yes, absolutely, we pay attention to the reach of the any given athlete's social media world, be it Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, etc. Those are also all very important elements into a well-rounded marketing outreach program, and so those things are important. Adam and A-Ray both came with the HEP Suzuki team that we've been with for the last 2 years. And Deegan's been with us. That's really the probably the best story we've got. It's really interesting. Brian contacted me very early. In fact, within the first probably couple of months that the helmet was available, he wanted to get a couple of helmets for his son and Hayden at the time, and very young, just starting to ride. And I'd love to do this, but man, I got to charge you for them. I can't afford to sponsor the helmets at this, stage of the company, and he was super cool. He got it and said, no worries, and bought helmets from us for a couple of years, and obviously Hayden's progressed as an athlete, and the family's progressed as a social media, powerhouse, if you will.
Yeah.
And they've become a really interesting partner for us.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because I've brought them up several times on other episodes as the model. I mean, these Brian's career is past. His son's really hasn't started yet they're iconic names today. I think you're probably the best guest that I've had so far, because you work directly with them. So, as much as you're comfortable with sharing, like what does that relationship look like? And have you seen, and do you notice the impact that is online versus on the track?
Yeah, I think the best part of this story for us is we've got a father that lived and breathed motocross and freestyle motocross for his entire career. And, with exceptional risk on the freestyle side of the equation. Brian's broken, many bones. He's got many concussions. He knows the value of safety. And he's got 2 young sons and a young daughter that are all interested in racing. I mean, they are the, ultimate racing family, if you will, out there. And so obviously his concern is his sons and daughters going through the same kind of injuries that he experienced in his career and his lifetime. And obviously he wants to do better for them. So, to have Brian come to us and say, hey, I want my kid in your helmets, that was great in its own right, and we have a lot of other fathers and mothers out there that have that same attitude. They know that motocross is a dangerous activity. It's got a level of danger that comes with it, and they want to do the absolute best they can to ensure that they're, putting their son or daughter in the safest products they can. So that's been synonymous with 6D from the very beginning, that we just had a better mousetrap. Now, from the measurement side as a brand, I mean, those things, it's just like, print advertising back in the day. It's really difficult to measure where the influence or where the actual purchase influence may have come from. Did somebody see, the Deegans involved with 6D and go, hey, I can associate the risk they take and, the father-son scenario and the activities they're participating in. And I need to go look at that 6D because of it. And then they march down to their dealer and make a purchase. It's really, really hard to say where those sales came from. But at the same light, the exposure and the reach that you get being involved with somebody like the Deegans is exceptional. They've probably got the largest audience of any of the motorsports families for sure out there, between the 3 of them when you start piecing all that together. So it's been very good for us, and we, enjoy that relationship, and we've got a good relationship with them, and we've got some cool stuff in the works for down the road with Hayden too that I think will be special once we show it. So
that's awesome.
So yeah, it's we appreciate that relationship, and we try to nurture it, and we don't have the deepest pockets of the brands out there. In fact, we probably got the shallowest pockets of all the brands out there.
So everything you do is you've got to get the most bang for your buck as far as who you position yourself with. And I mean, it's the same. Every company's going to have that same desire. I mean, I want to get the best result from the minimal amount of money that I can spend.
Yeah, it's interesting. In the football space right now, there's a company called Visus that started shortly after we did in February of 2013. They raised a bunch of capital and started building a football helmet with very similar design to what we have in our motocross helmet. They just put the dampers between two shells as opposed to two layers of foam, and it's a smart concept, but it's got its challenges, and they've had their challenges as a company, but they've raised over, there's $100 million that's been invested into that company, and they're looking for more again. And I look at that and I scratch my head. I go, gosh, those investors will likely never see a return on that investment. And you start looking at numbers like that, going, gosh, how did they go through that kind of money and not have the results they were expecting or looking for, and I compare it to what we've done, and we've absolutely, I'd love to say our company was bigger and we've grown larger than we are today, and that we were able to bring more helmets to the market more rapidly. I'm very proud of the job that we have done with the capital that we raised and the responsible method that we've run the company with. So those dynamics come into play, and it's really hard when you're negotiating for a top level athlete, because that's an important part of the equation, and maybe you don't have the funds that somebody else does, and in a situation where it comes down to dollars, you might come up on the losing end of that deal.
Yeah.
So it's reality, and it's part of the ball game that we all participate in, and we've just I think historically we've been able to offer something that others haven't, and that's been the solution that we offer inside our helmet, which is the technology.
Yeah. Well, as we kind of wrap things up, and again we have Bob Weber with 60 Helmets talking to us today about the brand, where it came from, and what they've done to position themselves in the marketplace. And Bob, as we kind of wrap things up, you had mentioned, how sometimes it's, how do I track what I've gotten out of a relationship like the Deegan family, or like, my relationship with Seven Deuce Deuce and the riders on various teams. And I think it's interesting, my company operates in a world that everything that we do is tracked heavily, right? We get hired for somebody to say, I spent $1 and I generated 4 or 5, 6, whatever. So it makes it, people get confused though, because that's not how you can track everything else. That's not how you necessarily track a relationship like the Deegan family. So the way we've started to look at it and educate our friends and our clients on it is you have to look at it two ways. You have ROI, return on investment, and that's with, hey, you know what, if I put money into a Google AdWord campaign, I should know exactly what I get out of it. But then we also refer to something called EOI, and exposure on investment, and understanding the value that the exposure of a family like the Deegan family, or, look, if you're going to put your ad in a magazine, you might as well do it in the most iconic magazine, because you know that it's going to get the exposure that you're hoping for a brand like Racer X. So looking at it as exposure on investment. Hey, what type of exposure is the Deegan family getting? And looking at those numbers and be like, man, I'm getting more exposure off of 3 videos from the Deegan family's YouTube channel than I would be a Super Bowl ad. And it's looking at it like that and just understanding the value that my brand is at the forefront of the Moto YouTube channels because of this family, and then also having some metrics that you can, run Facebook ads and YouTube ads, and then you can look at ROI off of that. So people get confused like that, and it sounds like, and from the conversations that we've had before this, Bob, it sounds like you get the value of, man, I really want to position myself with athletes that get it, that have the attention of the marketplace, and then you're always looking for other ways to generate ROI as well. So, I thought that was interesting.
No, it's true. I've been in the industry my entire career, and I love racing and I love motorcycles and anything two-wheeled really. We're also in the cycling segment, but when I step back at it and look, you've got to have a well-rounded net, if you will,
yes.
The web that you put out there, and that includes riders, That includes your dealers. That includes going to events and communicating with your riders and the public, and they can come up and talk to you about the product, and you get that one-on-one, ability to answer questions, as there'll be a lot of questions. Unfortunately, today the concussion-proof helmet is not available, and quite truthfully, it'll probably never be available, and at least with known materials and methods and acceptable sizes of helmets today. That that's a tall order. So everybody knows there's some level of risk that comes along with the activity, and the best way I can mitigate that is put the best helmet that I'm aware of on my son or daughter or myself, and so it all comes back to education, and that exposure meter is so important, because if you're not being seen at some level, you can be forgotten about. Obviously, people, awareness is, something I talk about a lot when I, just talk with my staff, or, if you're not aware of something, then you have no ability to respond to it or react to it or plan for it. So you've got to have the awareness of what the, situation is, or what your goals are. And then you've got to put things in place to get there. So I look at it that every bit of that branding and every bit of that net is important. And today online, we've got more and more ability, to track who's coming to our website. What are the characteristics of that person? Can we build a lookalike audience to that person or that profile that's coming to our website? And now can we reach out and try to find more people like that by spending some time on focusing, the light, if you will, on that specific type of an individual, and it's interesting. I wish I had, more time to spend on learning and studying some of those dynamics, because I think it's really important. We have a street helmet that is really, really a great product, but our customer in general on the street side of the motorcycle world doesn't know 6D. We weren't racing with a Geico Honda on the 6D on the street side of things, and the street enthusiast doesn't necessarily follow racing the way that the off-road enthusiast follows Supercross and motocross or GNCC, and those activities. They're more passionate in the off-road side, so they've been exposed to our brand. Where on the street side, we were at the Long Beach show a couple of weeks ago, and you have customers come up and go, "What is 6D? I've never heard of this brand before." Or, "Oh, yeah, you guys are the ones with those little dampers in there. I saw something on you guys. Tell me about your helmet." Those are the things that are really hard to define, and that you need to work into that net, if you will, and try to check off every point. Okay, I've got my online covered, I've got my print covered, I've got my website covered, I've got my riders covered, I've got my ambassadors covered. I've got my in-store branding covered, I've got my packaging covered. All those things that come into making a product or a brand successful.
Yeah. I think when most people think that they have a sales problem, really when they look at it, they have an attention problem or an exposure problem. Because if you have a quality product and you do a quality job of communicating that and getting exposure, it sells. So where most people look at it like, "Oh, we've got a major sales problem right now." And really, when you look at it, not enough people know who you are, know about your technology, know about your value proposition, what makes you different than everybody else out there that's trying to get your customers' dollar as well. And that's a lot of what we touched on today. Well, man, I'm grateful for you to come on the show, and I've enjoyed learning about your company more than what I already knew over the past several months, and just seeing everything that's going on, and I look forward to continue to see that. And I know you guys, the type of company you are, you're not one that just kind of sits there and rests on your laurels. I know there's probably things in the works to improve and continue to push the envelope, and I appreciate that, and hopefully we can have this conversation again here in the next several months, and kind of follow up and see where everything's at, because as each passing month and passing year, what we all have to do as companies change to get the attention of our customers. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story today.
Likewise, Luke, I really appreciate it. It's a great opportunity for us, and I always enjoy chatting with you. And the platform over there at RacerX is excellent as well. So,
awesome.
To be part of that, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, no doubt. We appreciate you. Well, I will. Before we go, where can people find you? Drop the website URL, and then obviously on social media. What are the best platforms?
Yeah, it's 60helmets.com, and you can follow us. We've got a number of different Instagram accounts, depending on if it's the U.S. or Europe or bicycle or motorcycle. But search 60, and you'll find us there on Facebook and Instagram as well.
Great.
And
all right.
YouTube.
Well, we appreciate you, Bob.
Luke, thank you much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Moto Marketing Podcast. If your goal is to get real, measurable results from your marketing that will grow your company revenue, then check out how Impact Media can get the same results that they have for Moto's most iconic brands by visiting thinkimpact.com. That's THINKIMPAKT.com. Have a marketing question that you want answered on the show? Send your questions to questions@motomarketingpodcast.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And we'll catch you on the next episode of the Moto Marketing Podcast.